Good morning and very warm welcome to everyone. Before we start our session, I would like to all of you for joining. My name is Suchitra Chatterjee and I am an expired biodiversity professional project intern at Sustainable Greens LLP. Also on call, we have Dr. Minakshi Singh, who is the founder and managing director of Sustainable Greens LLP, a green tech consultancy innovative and sustainable solutions to mitigate climate change. In this live session, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Debojyoti Raha, Clinical Research Manager, Forestry and Biodiversity at IORA Ecological Solutions Private Limited. He has obtained his PhD from Forest Ecology and Ecogenomics Laboratory at Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Central University in Madhya Pradesh. Additionally, he has 8 years of experience in forest ecology, carbon sequestration, and has conducted extensive field surveys of various forest types and terrain across central, western, and northern India. Therefore, I assure all the viewers that you will receive innovative insight about the Dev Bhumi sacred group and thought-provoking conversation in next 30 minutes. Hello and welcome, sir. Would you like to say anything before we start our discussion?
Okay, thank you everyone. And I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the team of Sustainable Greens. And my name is Debojyoti Raha, and I have a PhD in botany. And after doing my PhD, I joined as in a postdoctoral research associateship in Indian Institute of Forest Management. During that period of time, I get to travel 5 different states in country of India and experience a lot of different biodiversity spots and various vegetations. And now, currently, I'm working as a senior manager in IOTA Ecological Solutions. Thank you.
Perfect, sir. So let's start with the fundamentals for everyone who are new to this sector and as well as who are professionals. So can you tell me what is sacred group and how you developed your interest in this field?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would like to thank you guys to give an opportunity to talk about something which has been neglected for uh, See, when I was in masters, even in mainstream academics, we didn't get to know much about sacred groups. In my early PhD days, I was going through the review of literatures and I found out all the literature about sacred groups and how important it is to for ecosystem resilience and to proper way to mitigate climate change in a sustainable and traditional way. So, the sacred groups to explain it, it will be better to quote the French sociologist Emile Durkheim that he said the positive interactions between the deities. Right. And this,
So now that we all have a brief idea about the sacred groups
many
and
South Asian communities.
how
Yeah.
the Indian community is promoting with their spiritual and yeah, beliefs. So I would like to ask you that could you please embrace us with the ecological, mythological, and the ritual thinking behind these sacred groups?
Yeah, sure. See, nowadays the dominant perspective do not recognize such alternative conservation practices and often label them as superstitious or culturally backwards. Now, the modern subaltern studies they question the hegemonic intention and practices of marginalizing and silencing the underserved people, in this case, the indigenous people, and portraying them as kind of devoid.
Sir, kindly check your network as your voice is a bit cracking to the audience.
Size. Am I audible now? Hello.
Yes, sir. You may continue.
Okay. Thank you. So, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I was wanted to know that as these sacred groves are based, means they are being established, being based on various ritual thinking. So, what are the ecological, mythological, and the ritual thinking behind establishing the sacred groves?
Okay. Start with the mythological example. I would cite, as you all know, that in Hindu mythology, there were three kinds of sacred forests, right? Tapovan, Shrivan, and Mahavan, right? Tapovan is where all the ancient great sages resides, alongside with the wildlife. And for example, if we can cite the great epic saga, one of the finest, we all saw that Rishi Kanva and Shakuntala, and they are in that forest and playing with the fawn in that particular picture. The sages, then the human and wildlife can reside side by side and can live peacefully. Okay, that's the example of Tapovan. And in this particular Tapovan, human interference were not allowed unless you are a nobleman and seek advice from the sages. And the second one is Shrivan. Shrivan is where the goddess of prosperity resides, right? So it was believed that if we disturb the goddess of prosperity in any way, for example, cutting the trees down, because the trees and the animals were her property, right? So if we cut down the trees or harm the animals in any way, then there will be consequences, right? The god will be angry and there will be consequences. So that's why in Shrivan, the human interference was completely prohibited. And the third one is Mahavan. So we can see an example of Mahavan in, again, I can cite Kalidas in Kumar Sambhavam, where he uses his famous expression. He says that the flowers of beauty and monosperma during the spring looked like a flame in the forest. Right. So that is the example of Shrivan. So we also can see in Vedas, in Chatur Vedas, there are many references where they actually depict the Hindu as big banyan trees, big Ficus bengalensis trees, and there are many references of sacred forest where human interference was completely prohibited. Right. So the practices of sacred groups and considering the forest sacred based on the deities residing inside them is very ancient and regular in our culture, right? And for the history, I would tell a story which in 1730s, the Maharaja of Jodhpur needed fuel wood because he was constructing his new palace. Now, his main attempt to fell a nearby grove of khejdi trees. The khejdi is now the state trees of Rajasthan. The scientific name is, as you can remember, Prosopis cinerea. Right. Now the khejdi trees, their main attempted to fell a nearby grove, and these khejdi trees were believed to be sacred by the local Vishnoi community, right? As described in their sect of disciplines, right? Now, as a symbol of protest, when they get to know that the man is attempting to fail the sacred rules, so as a symbol of protest, a group of men and women from the missionary community of Hijrali village, they rush to the sacred groves and wrap their hand around each and every tree to prevent them from cutting. Right? This protest was led by Amrita Devi. Now, it is narrated that more than 350 protesters who hugged the trees were massacred, completely massacred by the soldiers. Now, appalled by this incident, the king of Jodhpur called his man back, apologized to the community. This incident is known as the Bishnoi Environmental Movement, or as known as the first Chipko movement. Right. So basically, the incident shows how people care about something they really believe in. Right. The Khejri trees are very important in their culture, and they wanted to save those trees from being cut down. So that's why they went and hugged each and every tree. That much sacrifices. So that shows the dedication of the local community to save the environment. Although the Vishnu community is known for their environmental causes, they always fought for environmental causes. So, in history, for example, in Northeast also, in Northeast India, shifting agriculture, we all know as Jhum cultivation, they are very closely associated with sacred, right? Now, the people of Northeastern people believe that protecting and worshipping the forest would grant them blessing, and they'll harvest more, right? Now, the problem is during the British colonial period, and all the sacred groves along the fellows became state properties. Previously, it was handled them and preserved them. But now it's become a state property, and therefore they were treated at par of the regeneration forest, and even organized under forest working plan for extracting timbers and other NTFs. Now, this so-called scientific forestry that was launched by British government in the mid 19th century involved opportunistic extraction of as much timber, fuelwood, and bamboo as possible, and also includes the destructive extraction of other non-timber forest products through the agencies of contractors. And this led to destruction of many sacred groves, especially in North India, right? And another insidious practice, I would say, into the destruction of sacred groves is the identification of the wild woodland gods, the wild tribal gods, uh, they're the gods of pre-Brahminian society with the gods of Hindu pantheon. Right. Now, this involves the installation of idols of Hindu gods inside the tribal temple, and followed by construction of concrete temples after fully or partially clearing the vegetation. The vegetation, which was once consists of big, grand trees and harbors a great biodiversity. So, these are the kind of historical example how the sacred groves were completely distracted. Now, in case of ecological importances, many researchers shows that the sacred groves harbors unique biodiversity. That's because sacred groves is conserved through the ages. This traditional knowledge is passing down by the generations, and it was conserved through the hundreds of years. So it really contains the old pristine biodiversity which once dominated the area, right? For example, there are some researchers who found Picorrhiza kurora. It's a plant, and Picorrhiza kurora and Nardostasis jatamans. These two plants were listed as critically endangered under IUCN Red List. But they have found the abundance of these species in Tungnath. Tungnath is a sacred grove in Uttarakhand,
Okay.
lies over 3,000 meter. They have found the abundance of these critically endangered species, which was never be found in regular reserve forest. Also, they have found alpine masked deer and steppe eagle. They are also listed as critically endangered by the IUCN Red List. Okay, so it shows that sacred groups consist of pristine biodiversity, which are very rare in normal preserved forest. Another example I would give how the community is preserving the sacred groups in Pudukkottai district of Tamil Nadu. The bats, okay, the Pteropus giganteus, the Indian fruit-eating bat, so Indian flying fox, they considered as sacred animals and worshipped by the local people residing in and around the village. Now they believe the goddess Kali would punish if anybody hurt or kill the bats. So there is a festival named Adi festival, which happens between July and August. In this festival, local people offer fruits like guava, mango, jamun to the and they believe that if the bat eats the fruit, then their family will live a happy and cheerful life, right? So at the same time, due to this sacred nature of this sacred group, the cultivable landowners from the surrounding villages of this group do not enter or do not uh, allow any kind of conflict with the fruit-eating flying fox of the area. Now, thanks to Bram Stoker, who was actually the writer of Dracula, and all the movies we see, the bats are actually considered as evil animals.
Yeah.
Right. So any horror movie, you'll see the bats are flying around. That means there would be a vampire around somewhere. So so that portrays bat as an evil animal, which is actually not. If you hold a bat, you'll realize it's a small puppy with wings. They're very gentle in nature, and they were somewhat neglected by the wildlife biologists. So this way, the bats are being preserved in the sacred groves by the local community. So, in this way, the basically the tribal people and the people who believe that the forests are sacred, they are trying to preserve what's left. We all can give an example of Kantara movie. It's a huge, high-grossing film we all know that actually depicts the relations between human and the sacred nature, right? So that's the ecological significance of sacred groves. It harbors a biodiversity which is extremely very unique. And even some researchers found in some Central Indian sacred groves, even a species of Cyathea. It's a tree fern. So uh, it really, we have to think that we have to value the ancient culture for preserving the wild forests and to believe in them.
So it was a very great and innovative thought you shared with us, sir. And based on the knowledge you said about the three ones, the Shrivan, Mahavan, and Tapovan, and also few plant species you shared for the sacred grove. So I can state that these sacred groves are actually created by the people from the deep appreciation for nature and spiritual belief, and these ideas are leading to conservation or preservation. Means if we have to use a precise word for this, so what according to you is more precise, whether these are leading to conservation or preservation?
Well, I would say that they conserve the entire forest by preserving each and every species. Because, see, uh, every species in India have some kind of mythological aspects. For example, the leaf of beauty and monosperma, right? Three leaves of beauty and monosperma, they depict the Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, the bale
Yeah.
patra, leaves of Eagle Marmalus, they depict the three eyes of Mahadev. That's why they were, you so all trees or plant species basically have some kind of mythological features. So that's why uh, they preserve those species, and eventually the entire ecosystem is being conserved by the local people. That would be my opinion.
Okay, sir. Thank you for giving this information as well. Now, I would like to move to our next question. That is based on the different names that these sacred groves have. Like in Marathi, we call this Devrai. Sarna in Chota Nagpur. So, can you give us its insights of the uniqueness that about the names based on the regions these sacred groves are located?
Oh, well, sure. Actually, you have mentioned Sharna.
Yes.
In West Bengal, in Purulia mainly, Purulia is the border of Jharkhand, which is actually the Chotnagpur area. We also call this sacred groves as Sharnas. India is one of the biggest sacred groves found in Purulia district. Now, Sharna means Sharan, means to provide sanctuary for the wildlife and for the tree species by the human interference, right? Or as you can say that they Madhya Pradesh they call this Dev, Dio Dev. Dev means either Devthan, Dev ka sthan, where the Devta or the deity resides, right? So it's based on the vernacular languages. The people name of the sacred groups varies
Okay,
from
sir.
region to region.
Before next question, I would like to make a quick note over here. For those who are having multiple questions popping in their mind, kindly note them down in a comment section. And these all those questions will be addressed in the last 20 minutes of our session. So moving next, as we all know that climate change poses a real and undeniable threat to our entire civilization. It's already visible and can be catastrophic if we don't act now. These extreme weather events such as temperature rise, unpredictable monsoon, and increasing drought and flood threaten achieving the sustainable goal development targets. Therefore, we need to take actions to regulate the regional microclimate. So, what do you, according to you, sir, these sacred groups play by for regulating the regional microclimate?
Okay. So let me give an example in the first-hand example that we have experienced during our survey in Central Indian Sacred Groups. In Chhindwara district, we have found a group named Alamdev. Right. In Alamdev group, there was no temple or no concrete structure. There was just a woodland shrine. Okay, there's a structure of rocks, and they worship it using the natural things like they using unique rocks, and they made these little idols of wild boar because they believe the wild boar is one of the fiercest wildlife in this particular region. So in that particular sacred groves, we've seen the watershed protection, which was being done by the sacred groves. The Kanhan River, which flows through the Chhindwara district, is that was the month of February, and all most of all the catchment area was dry. But in that sacred grove, the Kanhan River was passing through that sacred grove, and it was full of water. The catchment area was full because of the availability of large girth class trees. Okay, they actually conserve the watershed of that particular area, which has become the lifeline of for the wildlife of this particular area. We have also fortunate enough to spot a few spotted deer and various kind of deers and a few Indian jackals over there who was residing beside them. And the local people were also sometimes collect the water from there. So basically, see, sacred groves constitute higher biodiversity, which in a short time span affect several community level processes within the ecosystem, and in the long term contribute and maintain the ecosystem processes or the ecosystem balance, if I say, in the face of preservation. Physical biological of the sacred groves. It helps the moderation or regulation of various climatic factors. For example, the first one would be the local hydrology that I have mentioned, and maintenance of nutrient cycle, and of course the maintenance of soil fertility. Because the sacred groups create a controlled temperatured environment and provide a moisture uh, to the herb species of this area, the microbial growth in the soil they get regulated and they're very regular in this area. So it increases soil fertility, and they also increase and all kinds of adaptive factors. Okay, so in case of microclimatic regulation, groups are very important because it's harbours a great and of course, the watershed protection. Although the sacred groves does not provide any kind of provisional ecosystem services because it's most of the cases it prohibited to go inside the forest and harvest the
Yes,
non-timber forest products. Yeah, it's basically regulatory service which has been provided by the sacred groves, which is very important for climate change mitigation.
okay. Since you have worked on sacred groves in central India and also have published a research article titled Tree Diversity, Biomass and Carbon Storage in Sacred Groves of Central India. So, would you like to brief us on it about your work?
Yeah, sure, why not? In the year of 2016, I guess, there was a CSI project of sacred groves in central India. So we get to go to the field. That was the first time I went to the proper field and experienced the forest ecosystem. So I went to the area and we basically did our fair share of review of literature and found out that there are sacred sites, not actually sacred groves. Right? They're just sacred sites. Or so we went there, and that particular group I have mentioned, that is Alamdev group. That was our first experience with the sacred group. Now we have found we I can also show you some photos. It's not possible in an YouTube session that
Yes,
to share the photos. I've also
yes,
learned. So I'll just show you the photos on my laptop so that you can get a idea how the sacred groups looks like.
yes,
Okay, see as you can see, this is the first Alamdev sacred group. This is the shrine, the main shrine of sacred groups. So see, there is no temple or something like that. This is just a natural structure, and people uh, these are the products or the things they use to worship the sacred groups. The first one, this one, is they sacrifice wild hens to the dev of this particular area, and they hang these toenails over there to cast the evil spirits away. Okay, as you can see here, this little figurine of wild boars,
yes, sir.
and these are the some unique looking rocks. All these things are natural, and there's no plastic was used or something. So, and the second group was I was talking about this watershed regulation, right? So as you can see,
Yes, sir.
this is the Kanhan River in front of the group. Okay, it's a month of February. It's a very dry month, but the catchment area was full in Kanhan River. It was just inside of the sacred group particularly, and close look of this area. Now, this is also a sacred group which was resided deep inside the forest.
Yes, sir. It is clearly
As you can
visible.
see, the biodiversity, right?
Yes,
And this is the as you can see the biodiversity of this area. It's completely fascinating.
yes,
There's a local water source over there, and the forest is phenomenal. The natural resources are phenomenal over there. And now these things. See, it's a sacred grove. Used to be a sacred grove, I would say. This was the primary temple, with ancient temple made out of bamboos, stones, clays, and all sustainable things. But eventually, the local authority decided to take it down and made this. As you can see,
yes, yes, sir. Concrete temple, completely structured.
it's a
Yes, sir.
concrete structure. Yeah, yeah. So it actually cleared the vegetation of the area, and they made this temple. For giving a better perspective, see, see the size of the trees over there. See the gut plus of the tree. There's a Arjun and there's an arm tree. A local people, a local person told us that let me show you how was the sacred groups before they start this uh,
Construction.
construction. So
Yeah.
he took us to the farthest point of the sacred groups and showed this. They said that once these trees were dominant in this area, the complete forest, it's a pristine forest, but for some reason, the authority decided to take down all the trees and made some ungodly structure in the, ironically, an ungodly structure in God's place. So that's the problem we're dealing with, right? And I can give you an example. It's a thing that we see that we were doing our survey in Pandurna district. There was a sacred grove in the top of a hill. You have to climb up for like 3 kilometers, and you will get to the sacred grove. There were three temples. First one is a dargah, okay, a Muslim dargah. Second one is a Shiv mandir. Then third one is a tribal woodland god. And so if you go there, you have to worship all of them. You have to go to each and every temple and pay your tribute. So it actually depicts the communal harmony, which was still practiced in the local tribal community and local community. And they're not very educated per se. That they don't but what we lack as urban people, they still and they decide if they have to live side by side for the next 100 years. So why not live in harmony, right? And another example, you will find it fascinating that in a tribal village called Borpani, the village's name was. So we were doing our survey. They speak Gondi language. They don't speak Hindi, so we had to had a translator with us. And there was a celebration in this house. So we asked that what we were celebrating for, and they said that I had my second girl child today, yesterday, right? So we are celebrating that. So I said, you had your second girl child, so you don't want sons. I mean, you must have desired to have son, right? To vansh ko aage badhana and everything. They said, and you'll find it fascinating. They said that no, we think if a girl child born in our house, that's a direct blessing from the goddess, right? So they actually cherish the girl child than the boy child. So it's a surprising thing that they are practicing all these things. They are uh, actually the flag bearer for sustainable development and for mainly sustainable and modern thinking. We are not modern actually. They actually have that modern thinking, right? So this kind of experience, unique experience we had was completely flabbergasted to see these kind of things, right? And you have seen in my photos that the forest of this area was properly conserved, and no one is allowed to take even a twig from the area, and they actually uh, preserve it that way, despite the fact that their children are believe that the nature should be preserved. See as superstitions, just like the other scientists, the urban scientists do. So this is a great thing that we have experienced over there. Now we have reported 42 sacred groups from that area, and unfortunately, most of the sacred groups are now converted into concrete structures, and most of the the trees have been cut down. But we also did find some of the sacred groups, just like I've shown you, that which are still conserved in a proper way, which it should have been. So it was a great experience, a kind of an eye opener for being a researcher of a forestry.
Yes, actually, it is eye opener to me as well because as you shared about the girl child birth, they are celebrating over there and the communal harmony the people have in them. So that was really very innovative and as well as inspirational thought that you shared with us. So moving forward, as there are 1 to 1.5 lakh sacred groups has been reported all over the India, and these reservoirs have rare fauna and rare flora species in both rural and urban environment, and these sacred groves have become a biodiversity hotspot to protect the native species and as well as the native culture people are practicing over there. So I can state that the sacred groves are the genetic reservoir of indigenous floral and animal species. So is this statement is correct to put over here?
Yeah, of course it's correct, but because as I've said many times that the sacred groves they actually uh, consist of pristine biodiversity, and these actually acts as genetic reserve of that area. Species which cannot be found in the normal reserve forest, right? And the thing is that the for example, government has made so many laws to protect the forest, and some of being a researcher of forestry, I can say that the people are not necessarily following them, right? Following the laws. There are many cases of grazing, intensive tree cutting everywhere. So the enforcement and sanctioning mechanisms are so different between the traditional conservation practices and other conservation practices. Like formal conservation practice, so formal protection depends on like legal frameworks, right? And involves a large number of officers to enforce the laws, while informal nature conservation is mostly enforced by the local people, the community members, and the former system can be very expensive and includes a lot of people and includes a lot of red tapes and everything, while the latter is carried out voluntarily and cost literally nothing. So the international community, sadly, has failed to recognize this kind of these approaches. However, in some areas in North Hills, especially in Garo Hills, we were informed by some of the researchers that the forest department actually declaring those sacred groves as community reserve, right? And under their supervision, the community will take care of the sacred groves, and they will ensure that the resilience is protected of the forest. So, yeah.
Okay, sir. So, as you mentioned about the challenges of the sacred groves that these are facing due to climate change effect, deforestation, and human expansion and their endless greed. So,
Yeah.
based on the challenges you already mentioned about the concrete temple built by replacing the original and the normal temple that people used to worship. So, what other challenges would you like to mention for the sacred groves?
Okay, there was a sad incident. Just as I've said, it's really it's a controversial topic, but I would say when Christian missionaries came to India in southern India, they actually led the people uh, to believe that your God, which was the traditional God, and there were kind of so many sacred books over there. Your God is uh, is not a true God. The true God is Jesus, and you should abandon your God and all the things associated with Him. That includes all the sacred books and natural forests, and you should follow Jesus. They did follow Jesus, and eventually they forgot about their own traditional knowledge. They forgot about our tradition to save the nature, to conserve the nature. That was a very sad incident happened. And after that, in Kodagu district, okay, the Kodagu district, it contains near about 100 and 1200 sacred groves. Okay, it was classified as protected forest before, and was transferred to the revenue department in 1905. Okay, 1905. And now, based on archival research, right, attribute researchers attributed that this after turning it over to the revenue department, the decline of that area was so extensive. 62% vegetation was lost from 15,506 acres. It came down to 5,947, mainly due to encroachment. Right now, in 1985, the sectors were again handed over to the forest department, and then it was classified as reserve forest first. And secondly, I would say that the landowners who want to expand their cultivable land. Same happened in Kodagu district also. The neighboring farmers in Kodagu district, they destroyed the certain sacred groves. While it's a very unique thing, you see, they destroyed the sacred groves while establishing coffee plantation. Okay, They sell the part of their sacred groves to the coffee planters and get the money and build the temple inside of the sacred grove. This is a two-way destruction. They're not just building the temple; they're also selling the land to the capitalist people. So,
Yes.
government interference is really necessary in these kind of cases, so where powerful individual they ignore the community interest. So, government interest is very necessary in these areas.
Okay.
And I would say that another example of sacred groups is when a particular sacred group gets degraded, the forest department try to restore them, right? But in some cases, in many cases, I would say we have seen firsthand that it becomes a homogeneous plantation, okay, instead of a heterogeneous, balanced ecosystem. So the main thing about sacred groups is that it contains pristine, wide varieties of species. Instead, now they're containing only one or two timber yielding species, which is very economically important, of course, but doesn't contribute to the nature that much. So, better plans should be carried out. Better plans should be laid out before carry out these kind of afforestation plantations.
Okay, sir. So as I promised, now I would like to open the floor for the questions. As we are almost towards the last 20 minutes of our session. So the first question is from Maya Shahagiri. How do we start sacred groves in urban neighborhood?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. See, now the urban people doesn't have any knowledge about sacred growth. We, being a modern people, we believe that this traditional conservation things they're superstitious and backwards, right? So we have to do some awareness about it. They have to know that the nature should be protected and nature should be worshipped in some cases, right?
Yes.
So if we trying to conserve a sacred groves in a urban area, the first of all the government should interfere. They should declare the area. We have to get a petition to get that area conserved. Government should provide some kind of fencing and protection measure to the area and the community. We will find, we will form, for example, but like biodiversity management committees, we will form a committee which will take care of the sacred groves, which will make sure that no one is, you know, exploiting the forest resources of this particular area. So that we can actually conserve sacred groves in urban nature, which is urban area, because which is very important for the urban air quality.
Okay, sir. So I hope, Maya, you have got your answer. Moving to our next question from Chandrakant Parmar. He wanted to know that is there any way to protect the salty barren land further to propagate as they are being stopping the fertile land?
Okay. See, any kind of alkaline or salty lands, you have to select the species which you are planting. For example, if you plant teak, Tectona grandis, which is a very important economical tree, in a salty barren land, it won't grow. It will fail. So you have to find the right species for this particular soil. For example, you can plant the Pyrosylvium dulce, the jungle jalebi in Hindu, or any kind of like Acacia nilotica, Acacia catechu, which is also very economically important plant, and it will actually restore the land. It will actually lower the salinity of this particular area and will give you good results. I've also worked in various plantation work in Campa work specifically, so I've seen these things. So you have to choose proper species, right? Basically, thorny or hardy species which can survive that particular soil and transform the soil into a more plantable area. Okay? So we can lower the salinity. So basically, my suggestion would be plant jungle jalebi, Epidosylvium dulce, Acacia nilotica, Acacia catechu, these kind of species.
So I hope, Chandrakant, you have got a very satisfactory answer from sir. Moving to next question from Arnab Ghosh. How do sacred groves contribute to natural resource management?
Okay, again a very interesting question. So see, natural resource management, it includes extraction of forest biodiversity. Now, sacred groups, it basically says that you cannot extract something from this forest in order to keep them pristine, all right? But if you can look the other ecosystem services that they are providing, right? So you will realize the sacred groups are actually providing much more than its marketing value, right? And of course, as you said, that natural resource management in Uttarakhand, there are many sacred groves where people are extracting medicinal plants from them, right? That I have mentioned that Jatamansi was there, and Jatamansi has huge medicinal properties. And there are so many medicinal herbs in the sacred groves which are being preserved. If we collect them sustainably, let's say in a sacred groves, we decided to collect the natural resources. If we collect them sustainably, then the sacred groves might survive, and as well as we. But let me give you an example. In Madhya Pradesh, there was abundance of so many medicinal species, right? And and let me give it this example: the Indian ghost tree. Okay, Indian ghost tree or Starcula urens. There was a huge population like 2 decades ago in Madhya Pradesh, but sometimes during the last decade, it was shown by some researcher that circular urines has some serious anti-carcinogenic activities, anti-carcinogenic principles. Now, the pharmaceutical companies, they wanted to extract those trees from the forest, so they went to the forest department and said that I want to do that. The forest department completely denied them that I won't be able to allow this. So they went to the local community and they chose a perfect time during Deepavali when almost all the forest staffs were away to their homes. They went to the villages and approached the young people, right, who were out of jobs in that particular area. So they approached the young people and said that if you provide us with the tree, then I'll give you this amount of money. So within 3 or 4 days, the 70% population of circular urines of that area was gone. Okay, so we have to make sure that we are extracting forest resources. That's fine, but the extraction should be sustainable.
Yes,
And now, after the price relation of these NTFTs, it's very hard to keep them sustainable, right?
yes,
So it has to come from the user's end. Being an user, we are using a forest resource product made by some company, for example, Himalaya. We have to demand that this product should be extracted sustainably, and you have to mention this in your bottle that this product was harvested sustainably. Then you cannot lie. So if we make this kind of argument, the companies has to extract them sustainably, right? So this way we can use the concept of natural resource management and actually get the non-timber forest products from sector.
okay, thank you so much, sir. So, Arnav, I also hope that based on the question, you have received a very satisfactory and thought-provoking solution to it. Now, moving to the next question, it is from R. Kenar. What made you enthusiastic about learning and understanding sacred groups? What role do they play in preserving indigenous community knowledge? As you have already
Well,
mentioned during the initial part of our session, but can you please elaborate a brief based on this question asked?
okay, so if you really want to understand forest nature, you have to go to the forest. You cannot get the experience from books. Books are fine, obviously, for theoretical knowledge, but you have to get the practical knowledge. So when we first went to the sacred groves, I realized how important this is, right? The community, without any we don't have to force the law to the local people and spread awareness campaign and pays a huge amount of money to the people for that awareness campaign. The community itself is taking care of the forest, right? When I first learned that, it was, as I said, it was kind of an eye opener for me. I was shocked to see that watershed was being regulated, and the pristine forest, okay, which is kind of different from the normal reserve forest. For example, in that study, that we have done in central India, we have found that the biomass, the accumulated biomass of the accumulated carbon stock in that particular forest is nearly double than the normal reserve forest, which clearly shows that the forest which is considered sacred is consists much more biomass because it consists of much more larger girth trees, and larger girth trees means that it has a climax ecosystem, right? So you have to go out, you have to go to the forest and experience the sacred grove by yourself, and you will understand why we're having this session in the first place. And as you said, that tribal knowledge, because see, they are actually the one who is practicing the sustainable development goals, okay, and sustainable living throughout the years. We have just started it now. We have started to using biodegradable things. We started to using herbal things, but they are using it for years. There's so much to learn from them, even from their the way they lead their life. As I've given you example, communal harmony and gender neutrality. All you can find those things in tribal living. Okay, so they are actually implementing their traditional knowledge, which is passed down through generations, and trying to conserve the nature. Actually, this nature they are completely dependent on. They're getting their livelihood from them. So they know that we have to conserve the nature, otherwise we won't be able to survive in the first place, which we as a modern people fail badly to understand.
Yeah, very correctly said, sir, that to experience the wild and to learn about the nature, we need to go to the wild. So moving on to the next, as you have already mentioned about the Rajasthan Bishnoi committee, who gave their lives to protect the trees, giving rise to a Chipko movement. So Mr. Dinesh Jinger wanted to know that is there any other states of India where people sacrifice their lives to protect trees?
Well, as you know, the another Chico movement, which had happened in 1970s, I was very fortunate to visit Reni village, Reni and Tapovan village in Uttarakhand. It was just like 40 or 50 kilometers away from Joshimath. We went there, we were doing our survey over there, river restoration survey, and we actually asked people around, okay, what was that? I mean, we just read it in the books and all the literature, but you lived that at the time. So they have explained how they still care about the nature. That they hug the trees. That's not for show. They actually care about the trees, right? So, in order to do that, in order to care about the trees, you have to understand how the trees or how the ecosystem or the nature is providing us, what they are providing us, and why they are so much valuable. And yeah, so for your answer, of course, the state of Uttarakhand, and they actually didn't have any, fortunately, didn't have any loss in human lives, but it became a huge movement, right? It became a huge movement and became a national movement when Mr. Bahuguna joined the community, right? And in many places during, especially Northeast India, especially in Garo Hills, there were uh, some undocumented things. If you ever went to Garo Hills, try to talk to the local people, try to talk to the old tribal people, the tribal head of the villages. They will tell you that actually people sacrifice their life in order to save the nature during the British colonial the era. So yes, there were some instances, unfortunately, where they lost human lives in order to protect the nature. Very sad, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it is said, and also we are thankful that you have such a great experiences and so many examples to share with us. So this session is becoming more interesting to know because on the examples you're giving to us. Moving next to Bhavya's question, she wanted to know if you can give some gist of project or some successful examples of sacred grove restoration project. And what are some successful examples of these sacred group restoration projects?
Okay. So as I have mentioned that in Kodagu district in Tamil Nadu, and Mysore in Karnataka, they actually have some sacred groves which are being conserved by the community. And I have since I have mentioned that the Kodugu district has more than 1,000 sacred groves. Okay, from small to like huge, large sacred groves, like 10 to 12, 10 to 20 or 50 hectares of sacred groves. But they are being conserved by the local community, and the forest department is actually very uh, methodical in this process. They're very methodical because they supervise the community management practices and make sure that no one can disturb the nature of this particular area. So yeah, Kodagu is a perfect example. Pudukotai, I'll give you an example of Pudukotai. In northeast area, especially in Garo Hills, the forest department declared the sacred groves as community reserves where the tribal community and the nature of this area, the sacred roots of this area, they uh, survive by protecting and providing for each other. Yes, the forest department is working surprisingly fine, and especially in Madhya Pradesh, we have also seen that they actually taken some initiative to protect what's left the in the forest, and they actually recognize the traditional conservation practices.
Okay. So, Bhavya, I hope you have got not one but more than one examples for the Sacred Grove Restoration Project. So, let's move to the next question. As we know, forest is a giver and they provide endless services. We can't count them. So, the next question is based on it. Namrata Tiwari wanted to hear more about ecosystem services.
Okay. So the ecosystem services is things which the services provided by the ecosystem. Okay. So benefit people obtain from the ecosystem, that is the ecosystem services, right? So there are four kind of ecosystem, as the forest researchers would know, and the first one, the provisional ecosystem services, which has actually market value, uh, it's not there in Sector 2 since it's prohibited to actually collect or extract any kind of non-timber forest products or timber products from the area. So the provisional services are not there, but the regulatory service is extremely prominent. And it's actually extremely important to, in order to mitigate the climate change, it's extremely important to recognize the regulatory features of sacred groups and the microclimate regulation, watershed protection, protection of edaphic factors, the soil, all these things. So, in terms of regulatory ecosystem services, the sacred groups plays an extremely important role in the area, and of course, the cultural services. There are
Yes.
four kinds of ecosystem, as we all know. The second and the fourth one is very important, very prominent in sacred groups because they on the basis of the cultural belief of the people, sacred groves are being conserved. So the cultural value of the forest, of this kind of forest, are very prominent. Okay, so one can actually go to the sacred groves and kind of evaluate the cultural services of this area if they can. That would be a great research, in my opinion.
Thank you, sir. I hope, Namrata, you have received the information which you wanted to know. Moving next, as the sacred groves have very cultural significance, and Bhavya Mishra wanted to know about your personal experience about the community and the benefits derived in the presence of the sacred grove.
Okay. Again, I have said that the watershed protection, and from that watershed area, the local people actually get water from those that sacred groves. See, the most of the catchment area, as I've said, was dry during the winter season. It's very hard to get water. It's a highland, so they don't have enough money to bore the soil and get water, underground water. And government, I'm sorry to say, are being negligible for over the years, especially to the underserved people. So they had to derive those things from the nature, right? So the sacred groves of this area became a provider for them, right? They of course occasionally collect some fuel wood from the forest, and they occasionally collect fruits from the forest, but not from the sacred groves of the other forest. From the sacred groves, they get drinkable water, And also the wildlife of this area completely depends on the sacred grove because, of course, the watershed program. And in most of the sacred groves in India, I guess there are varieties of medicine is a very beautiful, but extremely rare in the reserve forest. Right, it's extremely reserve forest. We have found in abundant population of Gloriosa superba in Patalkot area of Tamia district in Chhandwara. So they are actually act as a reservoir for medicinal plants. If we harvest them sustainably, they will sustain over the years and they will keep providing us the medicinal plants we need in our life. Okay, so yeah, those are the principal things that we can get from cyclic groups, and hopefully, we're not planning to cut down the trees. It will be there.
Insightful of your on this. Next question we have from Azam Khan. He is interested to know about the conflict resolution mechanism for the restoration of sacred grove. Sir, have you heard the question?
I cannot. Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, yes. So Azam Khan, he is interested to know about the conflict resolution mechanism for the restoration of sacred groves.
Okay. Uh, and that's actually a very good question. I believe Azam, I think, is a wildlife enthusiast because he's talking about the conflict. So the thing is that I have given an example during the session about the conservation of bat species,
Yes,
right? If we, if people you know, consider them sacred, they won't harm them. As simple as that. But the problem here is we also consider uh, monkeys, okay, rhesus monkeys, as sacred. Okay. Now what we do is we consider them as avatar of Hanuman, and we you know we give our tribute to those monkeys by giving them foods. And now they are rising conflicts, in, especially in Uttarakhand area. In order to eradicate the conflict, we have to understand they are the part of the nature, right? They're the part of the nature. That if we don't disturb them, they don't disturb us. As simple as that. We also have back in West Bengal in our home. We also have conflicts of elephants. Okay. Now elephants only attacks or any kind of animals only attacks when they feel vulnerable. Okay, it's us who make them harm. It's us who are cutting their habitats. If we protect the natural reserves, in order to protect natural reserves, we also preserve the bioresources and all the animals inside them, right? So you have to find a policy where actually Himachal Pradesh, government of Himachal Pradesh, actually working on some policies where the monkey conflict can be eradicated completely. So they are planting some fruit-bearing trees. Okay, fruit-bearing trees inside the forest, plenty of fruit-bearing trees, so that those monkeys will get food from the forest. They don't have to go out to get the food.
yes, sir.
Right. So it would be an interesting way to take the conflict down.
Yes. So, as I believe our session is almost over, so I have to cease accepting question at this time. And I would like to answer the last question, which is from Prakash Beer. Yeah, the sir is talking about the awareness as well as he is giving us the knowledge about the sacred groves, as many people are unaware of it. And Debojyoti sir, it was really joy to speak with you. And on behalf of Sustaina Green Tea and the audience, I would like to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with us all. In the end, I would
Thank you
like
so much.
a great line once said by a Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. The journey of thousand miles begins with a single step. This means no matter how big your goal is, you can achieve it if you just take the first step. Without you all, this session would have not been possible, and we promise that in the upcoming month, we will bring some amazing sessions as well. To learn about the forthcoming session, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.